Good to go now, I think.
So very good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to UN Global Compact India's Global C-Suite panel discussion session on the theme, Role of Organization, HR Practices, and Culture in Shaping Sustainable Organizations. To begin, let me share a brief background on the genesis of this program. Recently, GCNI concluded its Global HR Best Innovative and Sustainable Practices Championship 2021 by hosting a virtual grand finale on 9th April 2022. It was a culmination of 3 to 4 months effort where we received almost 45 case studies and best practices from organizations across the globe. The top 10 shortlisted companies presented their case studies at the grand finale, and a jury of 4 eminent academicians judged the case studies and chose the top 3. We've been delighted to know that so many organizations are adopting and prioritizing sustainable practices. To keep the momentum and continue this dialogue on the role of HR practices in shaping the sustainability culture of an organization, we have curated today's high-level discussion along with Accenture in India. We are very thankful to our esteemed speakers and the moderator to have taken time out this evening and join us for sharing their extremely valuable thoughts, ideas, and insights on sustainable and innovative HR practices. It is my pleasure to introduce the speakers. Ms. Reshma Ramachandran, Group Senior Vice President and Head of Transformation, the Adecco Group. Ms. Anuradha Razdan, ED HR, Hindustan Unilever, and VP HR, Unilever South Asia. Ms. Deborah McCormack, Global Board Effectiveness and Sustainability Lead, Accenture. And Mr. Aseem Kumar, Officiating Executive Director and Head APRC, GCNI. The panel discussion will be led and steered by a moderator, Ms. Vandana Saxena Porya, OBE, Chief Alarmist, the Human Alarm Clock and Company, who's very passionate about the sustainability agenda. Before I hand over the stage to our moderator, we have a video message from Dr. Alka Mittal, CMD ONGC and President GCNI. I request the video to be played, please. There's no sound.
Namaskar and greetings to all. In a bid to unite businesses, UN Global Compact Network India has launched a unique Global HR Championship 2021 initiative. It is a great opportunity for the business and HR leaders to share best practices around organizations, people, and culture to drive sustainable mindsets in the organizations and their value chains. A sustainable and balanced leadership brings opportunities to all stakeholders in the form of innovation, continuous improvement, competitive advantage, and long-term successes. HR leaders are uniquely positioned to deliver on these parameters, which are aligned with the SDGs and the UN Global Compact's 10 principles to achieve wholesome well-being and growth of people and the planet. The unprecedented challenges faced by the global community due to COVID-19 pandemic has also taught us many valuable lessons. As HR champions, let us reimagine our workforce strategies and come out with innovative business solutions during this final decade of action and make the world a better place to live. I wish all participants the very best.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for always being a mentor to our sustainability efforts. Now, I hand over to our moderator, Ms. Porya, to please begin the panel discussion. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Shreya. And it's a real pleasure to be here, especially because last year I was one of the judges and I saw the fantastic work that was going on. It reminded me of a very old advert that came out years ago, and I've changed it for the Indian context. If I give you 1 rupee and you give me 1 rupee, we each have 1 rupee. But if I give you 1 idea and you give me 1 idea, we each have 2 ideas. And that's the whole purpose of this discussion today. We're not just looking at best practice and next practice. What we're looking at is how can we bring our thoughts together and really make a difference? Because let's be honest, we're not going to be able to achieve sustainability globally if we don't work together. So I'm really delighted that we have such a high-powered panel with us today. We've got Hindustan Lever, we've got Accenture, we've got Adecco, and we've got the United Nations. So I am absolutely convinced that the ideas that you're going to hear about today, if we all take them to heart and we all work on them together, we are going to see the change that we want to see and be in the world. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Anuradha. Anuradha, first of all, it's fantastic to have you, and thank you for all the brilliant work that Unilever is doing, both in the fields of HR and sustainability, and making a difference on this planet. So I think you're the ideal person to ask, what's your perspective on how HR leaders and HR departments can actually influence business to adopt more sustainability-related practices, especially which are in line with their core operations? And on top of that, resilient to the changing industry or society trends. So Anuradha, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for that question, Vandana. And I must congratulate the team for this wonderful challenge that they have been putting out to HR teams in the last 2 years, which has really raised the conversation and the quality of work and brought sustainability at the heart of the HR agenda and the way HR leaders think about the HR agenda. Now, to respond to your question, I want to start by giving you a little bit of a perspective in Unilever, because I think that the HR agenda cannot be in any way different from the sustainability agenda that the business has. For Unilever, at the heart of our business strategy is to make sustainable living commonplace. And the sustainability goals over the last decade and over have been well entrenched across our operations. We have for very long held a belief that a responsible and sustainable business makes us a stronger and a better business. And in fact, we believe that that is the only way of doing business. So doing well by doing good is a value that goes back all the way to the days of our founder, William Lever, who with Sunlight Soap, really created a revolutionary product that allowed us to popularize cleanliness. And this was sustainable living then. And today we have 400 brands across the world that still are really wanting to make a difference and driven by purpose. Our sustainable living plan through our sustainable living plan, we have set out some very bold and ambitious goals around environmental impact and reducing environmental impact while increasing our positive social impact. And our purpose-led brands have grown. We've seen the impact of this. They've grown twice as fast as the rest of our portfolio. Sustainability has sort of been entrenched end-to-end in our manufacturing operations. And we believe that this is a big talent magnet for us in getting the best talent. If I take a step away from this and look at some of the trends, the societal trends that you asked or you referenced, I think some of the big trends that we will see over the next decade will be around technology, digitization, health and well-being. And this has all been sort of put into fast forward in the last 2 years of the pandemic, and sustainability will sit very much at the heart of this. which means that HR will have to play a very, very proactive role in really making sure that organizations mean business and stay ahead of the curve. And I think HR can do this through culture building. And culture is not in isolation. It's about skills. It's about it's about the way we do things, and therefore through really deep engagement with the business, through visible leadership role modeling and skill building. If I were to give you an example, in Hindustan Unilever, we have a flagship management training program that we've run for the last 50 years. One of the non-negotiable rotations is a stint with the communities. And this really has been embedded, and this is something we don't compromise on, where it's a 4-week rural immersion for all our management trainees to really understand the lived experience of a majority of our consumers. The other area where I think HR will play a key role is vigilance and setting a really strong governance framework, including targets for driving the social commitments and making it core to the way we assess leaders and develop leaders. And of course, then HR people have to be industry advocates in driving work that impacts communities, because when we impact communities, we are going to impact the quality of people who come and work in large operations. Just to sort of end with a couple of lines, in our response as Unilever and HUL to the societal trends, we framed a series of compass commitments. And at the heart of this compass commitments is what we call our social commitments. We know that social inequality is one of the biggest threats that the world faces. And therefore, we want to make sure that the voices and interests of the underrepresented groups continue are heard. And therefore, we've created a future of work strategy and plan that is at the heart of this. And this talks about 2 or 3 things primarily. The first is to make sure that everybody who provides goods and services to our organizational ecosystem gets a fair living wage, not a minimum wage, but a fair living wage. We want to spend disproportionate money with suppliers who are owned and managed by people from underrepresented groups. And finally, we want to pioneer and experiment with new employment models and equip 10 million young people with skills that make them future fit. And these social commitments have been envisioned and crafted in close partnership with HR and the business. But this will absolutely be an inextricable part of the HR agenda. So I'll stop here and would love to hear from the others.
Thank you so much, Anuradha. I love the way that you talked about entrenching sustainability into all aspects. I think that's really important. And when a company like Unilever does it becomes a beacon and it becomes a light to everyone else. And it's something to aim for. So I thank you and the commitment that Unilever's shown over the years. You know, getting to 50% female leadership is phenomenal. You know, they stated that the reason that Unilever wanted to do that was it was a business decision. 80% of the people buying the items from Unilever that are used more than 2 billion times a day are women. And so therefore we need to have women in roles, and we need to have sustainability there too. It was interesting that you talked about the 4-week rural, sort of immersion. I actually met one of your people, it must have been about 8 years ago or 10 years ago on a plane. And he'd come out of IIM Ahmedabad. And he said the first thing they did, there I was really proud. I'm IIM Ahmedabad. And I was sent to a village and I lived in a village. I learned humility. I learned what they went through. So, the fact that you did that, you started that years ago, and it's still going today, is a testament to the fact that sustainability is not lip service for Unilever. And I think that's an important message to everyone that's out there. These people on the panel are serious about it. Their companies are serious about it. The question is, how serious are all of you? And will you join with us in making the world a better place? So Anuradha, thank you so much for that. I'm going to move on to Reshma. Reshma, you're with the Adecco Group, and diversity and inclusion. we just talked very briefly about the gender part of it, but diversity and inclusion is an important part of sustainability in an organization. It'd be really useful to think about it from your point of view. How do you think HR leaders can strengthen diversity and inclusion in their organizations? And how does that promote sustainable development from your perspective?
Thanks, Vandana, for the question. And same as you, I think I'm second time on this platform, from being a judge to a panelist, and it's really, really wonderful to see how not only that we are engaging with the HR leaders, but also how the whole agenda is evolving. So coming back to the question, I want to build on everything that Anuradha said, and I don't think I can say it better than how she articulated. Just to set in context also the organization that I work for, so we are an HR organization. We actually are the leading talent advisory organization, and also like when it comes to placements, we are number 1, number 2 in the world. So it's not so much only about diversity and inclusion within the organization, it is also about how we serve the customers. And when I say customers, there are the clients, the organizations that we serve, and also the candidates that we place. So when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I think that it's when we talk about gender, it's really at the tip of the iceberg, right? There is so many aspects, dimensions to diversity. And where HR, and this is also where, just building on what Anuradha said, it's not so much about HR in isolation. I think HR is a part of the business. And I feel if you just look at the role of HR, from being administrative HR in the 50s and 60s, managing labor unions, to today, or I would say even it probably ended and we are in a transition phase now, where we talk about HR as business partners. HR is really evolving. And again, Unilever, great example. Leena Nair, who was the head of HR, has moved on as a CEO to take on a business role. HR is really moving in a different space in that sense. So it's not just partnering with HR, it's really taking the strategy of the business and translating that into action. So from that perspective, I would say as an organization, I say it's very generically across organization, but for Adecco, what is something that is fundamental is when it comes to diversity and inclusion, it's not just about the gender. And if I look at the SDGs, one of the aspects that we, as a goal, as an ambition, what we are striving to achieve is also improving or helping change that inequities in the society. So one of the things that we are actively working as a group is actually how do you place when it comes to candidates, and we place, just to give also a number, we place about 3.5 million candidates across the world in a year, Unilever being one of our customers, Accenture being one of our customers. So how do we actually get underprivileged people into this candidate pool? So I live in Europe, and if I take the crisis that we are facing in Europe, the Ukrainian war, one of the first things that we did as an organization was to actually create a platform to advertise for jobs for the refugees. So when I think about diversity and inclusion, again, gender being just at the tip of the iceberg, really at the tip of the iceberg, there are so many dimensions to diversity, right? And one of the offerings that we have as an organization is also diversity and inclusion. And within the organization, again, organizations like Accenture, Unilever, very, very vocal about it. 64% of our workforce are women. If you look at the top management, 30 to 40% of the top management is women. So gender being one part again, and I stress that because I think that's what is visibly seen. There is, and especially when you come to the Western part of the world, there is underrepresented communities. There are people of color, which is underrepresented. So it's not just women, it's the minorities itself, right? So as HR, I wouldn't necessarily call out HR as a function. I think HR is partnering with the business here. So as a business, I think what is important for the organization, Adecco as an organization, and I would say, this is where I'm generalizing it, across for the organization, what is important is to focus on making sure that we are not getting bogged down by the noise of just the gender part. There are different dimensions of diversity, disability. We just celebrated the autistic month, neurodiversity, people with who have no access to education, unfortunately, but not skills, right? Just access to education. So how do we bring these people into the workforce? And one of the aspects I would say is actually coming to numbers. So how do we measure it? It's a clear, tangible measurement. So again, as an organization, we are leaving that. So everything that I'm saying, I would say is EDICO leaving it. So I'm not going to call out what we are doing. So numbers. Second is the recruitment policy. So are we ensuring that there is equal opportunities to others? So as I mentioned, the Ukrainian refugee job platform, this is equal opportunities to all refugees. Just policies and practices. So women, again, leaving the workforce because of childcare. So what are the programs and policies in place to ensure that people who have to take the burden of care on the home front can also not only equally contribute, but also have equal chances of promotion and other recognitions in the organization. So policies and programs. And last but not least, and this is where, I'm a strong believer, not of diversity, but of inclusion. Last but not least is, how do you create that sense of belonging in the organization? So what practices, what policies, and this comes down to, again, what Anuradha said about the culture. This really goes in the direction of culture. So is your culture inclusive enough? Is your culture actually creating that sense of belonging? Is your culture actually allowing every voice to be heard? Is your culture actually attracting people who then also feel belonging in the organization? So I would say these are the 4 dimensions where HR definitely as a function can also play a strong role, but the tone being set by the business.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, Reshma. So what you're basically saying, if I paraphrase, is that let's bring the minorities into the mainstream. Let's make them feel welcomed enough that they're bringing their voices and they're bringing their whole self, including their baggage. The refugees, of course, have got baggage, but that baggage can actually help others learn what's going on in the world, what challenges their customers may be facing, etc., etc. And it was really lovely to hear both you and Anuradha talk about culture. She mentioned, the way we do things, the Charles Handy phrase, the way we do things around here. Are we creating that inclusive and belonging culture within our organization so that everyone wins? So that's great. Thank you so much for your points there. And I think, Reshma, the last thing you mentioned, or one of the important things that you mentioned, was there have to be numbers, there have to be metrics, there needs to be specific goals. And if we don't know what their goals are, we have to start from somewhere and put something down and then start building from there. So brilliant. Thank you, Reshma, for that. And now over to Debbie. Debbie, you're with Accenture, and obviously Accenture is known very much, for the tech that it does across the world and how it supports organizations. So I'd really like to know from you, what are the major challenges for adopting sustainable practices in tech-oriented organizations? And what do you think are the best practices or solutions for addressing the challenges? And if there's any examples you can give us from Accenture, or ones that you've seen around you, that would be great.
Well, terrific. Thank you so much, Vandana, and for the question, and both for allowing me to be here. I really enjoyed the competition. I'm so thankful you and Reshma have been judges before for this. I think it must have been very difficult to have your role. And I do want to congratulate each of the participating teams. I thought they were terrific, and I learned so much about what we can be doing from an HR standpoint. You asked about the challenges around technology, and extreme poverty is still projected to be about 6% in the year 2030. Hunger is on the rise for the 3rd consecutive year, right? The greenhouse gas emissions continue to increase, and gender inequalities, which we just talked about here, the diversity and inclusion, these continue to persist. And we know that institutions are not able to effectively address all of these because skill gaps still exist as well. And so how can technology and the combination of human potential really address these challenges as we reimagine our workforce strategies? And first, I do think we need to consider the relative industry impact on all of the SDGs and which ones we are able to look at and how we are able to implement them from a technology standpoint. So if we think about this, and what Accenture has been looking at is how we can enable the sustainable digital economy with these sustainable technologies, design products with data privacy and security in mind. We do have an opportunity to create sustainable pathways from technology. And this could be the digital economy through circular business models. It could be sustainable technologies through cloud services, and really designing products with accessibility for, again, data privacy and security to build trust within the software devices and making them both accessible and secure for the individuals, companies, and organizations using them. To expand technology access to all individuals and provide solutions to drive societal benefit and inclusive economic growth. Like Anuruddha said about Unilever, Accenture too has made sustainability commitments that we think are very important, whether it's around ID&E or how we're going to market. And a couple of them that have been technology focused that I wanted to highlight is really our commitment to achieving net zero and what we are having to put into place to do that from a technology standpoint. And whether that is the climate conscious travel that we're doing, trains versus planes, the green IT where we are going in and really changing out our own systems, or working with the suppliers and that collaborative and innovative solutions that we are coming up with together. But it also goes down to removing the waste and how we move to zero waste at each of our organizations. And by 2025, Accenture has said we will reuse or recycle 100% of our e-waste and our office furniture. We'll eliminate the use of single-use plastics, again, which is something I know very important to Unilever, and we'll do this by all of the locations by the end of the pandemic. So this is something we've been working on even when no one has been in our offices. We're also looking at planning for water risk, and then of course, tackling the racism and inequality. All of these things together have a technology base to them. And one of the things that I know is important to all of us is how we do this together. The focus on people, profit, and planet is not something that one of us individually is going to be able to really attain on our own. It's something that collectively we will be able to do together.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, Debbie. I mean, I think those, having those goals, and Reshma talked about, putting goals down. So 2025, 100% e-waste and technical equipment being recycled. Those are things that every organization could do. So it's great that you've, put it out there. Now people are hearing it and hopefully they will copy. And the same with water, the same with racism, et cetera, et cetera. I think the idea of going net zero and having a plan on how we're going to get there and how we're going to help our suppliers get there, because it's not just about us. We have huge supply chains and we've got to make sure that every person is doing their bit. I also really like the fact that you talked about data privacy, because people don't often think about that, data privacy and security in the context of sustainability. And it is absolutely vital. And you also mentioned the circular business model. The more we can get the circular business model going, the more we're going to see a lot less of the Earth's resources being used and hopefully making a much better place for our children, grandchildren, and many, many others to come. So thank you. Thank you for that. I am going to move on to Mr. Aseem Kumar. Aseem, COVID-19 derailed everything, derailed all the progress industry was making towards achieving the SDGs by 2030. And so to gain momentum back and get organizations to adopt sustainability processes and practices during these tough times, why is the role of HR from industry so important? I mean, surely all the leaders are important, but why specifically has UNGC been concentrating on, the HR leaders, and how can they ensure that the business focuses on all three, people, planet, and profit, as Debbie was talking about?
I think I am on mute. No. Thank you very much to all the great leaders here, and I am really happy, and the answer to your question somewhere lies in the fact that we are seeing top HR leaders particularly getting together and sharing with us their best practices, their examples, their preparations. And it is quite heartening to, tell you that when we started this, when COVID actually started destabilizing us, disturbing us, it was the time when we got together. It was the time when the HR assumed and proactively took, to begin with, knee-jerk, reactive actions. But during that period itself, HR was able to provide, a long-term, a short-term solution also. Because very soon we were to realize, all of us were to realize that this is not going to go away. And just because we are in a pandemic mode and we are, suffering at large, did not stop anyone from not only bouncing back from the pandemic, but also continue to work towards the sustainability agenda. And just now, Debbie said that we were planning this zero waste thing during the pandemic. Is an example, which means that, one is that you solve a problem like a firefighter. The other is that that this fire will come again in various forms and shapes. So you have to be proactive and find solutions which will, I would say, prevention is better than the cure. And that is the purpose of our purpose also of organizing this particular challenge or competition or whatever. You see, the India round was organized in the peak of lockdown, and most of the people with whom I discussed this, they said wrong time. People are busy. HR people particularly are very, very busy, extremely busy, because they have to take care of the situation. They have to look after the employees. They have to make sure, mental health issues, physical health issues, relocating of offices, remote work and all that. But I'm very happy to share, and most of you will know also, because some of you were in the jury. We had more than 65 entries during that COVID period. And I'm very happy to share that there also we had HUL as #1 and Altran and TCS respectively #2 and 3. But the point is that from our perspective, all the 65 are winners, because this challenge or competition is just for creating excitement and engagement. And also, it was for us, it was not hard work, but more than us, it was the hard work of the teams of various organizations who needed to devote dedicated resources to work out their best practices and then define it in the aligning with the SDGs. So I would say it was wonderful. And this year, for the global round, HUL and Wipro and Volvo and Nagarro and Salesforce, Times Group, Zensar, Vedanta, Azure Power, they were all part of the top 10. And the winners, as you all know, is ONGC, Nagarro and Wipro. So this is a critical mass of HR leaders coming out on world stage, sharing their best practices, learning from each other, and coming out with ways to further the sustainability agenda. What more can we ask for? Thank you.
Brilliant. I really love, for me, you talked about the 3 Ps, preventative, preemptive, and proactive. And that's really what you're doing. And that's what we need in an organization that kind of, for me, I wrote a book recently with the late Alec Padamsee. Yes. And we talked about whether people are like glue. And he always used to say that don't ever call people like glue, like they bind people together, because the problem with glue is eventually it becomes brittle and it all separates again. He says what you have to be like is like electricity and magnetism. You need to magnetize others, because when you magnetize others, they then take that magnetism and they spread it to others. And I think that's what UNGC's role has been, and Global Compact's role has been. It's very and in that bolt of lightning, then suddenly everyone starts to feel empowered and can make those changes. So thank you so much for what you do, because I think it's so important, you and Shreya and the whole team at UNGC Global Compact. All right, thanks, Asim, for that. I'm going to ask all of the panelists this next question, and it's very much about giving us some examples. So let me go back and start with Anuradha to answer this question, and it gives the others a bit of time to have a think about it. With COVID-19 and the pandemic, operating sustainably and responsibly is no longer an option for leaders. It really is a business imperative. So can you share one or two important practices a company or their HR team should adopt to achieve this and weave it into their culture? So Anuradha, can I start with you?
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Vandana. To stay on the theme of tackling the inequities in society, I think one of the first things we did in the first wave of the pandemic in 2020, in April or March, was that we realized that a large number of people were about to become unemployed as supply lines and their employment options came to a standstill. And we didn't want those who are part of our extended ecosystem to be affected by sudden drops in their income. And therefore, for 3 months, we actually went out and made a commitment that for 3 months, we would protect salaries of those in our, not just our employees, of course, but 350,000 people in our outer core, to drop them, to sort of insulate them from sudden drops in their income levels. And I think that was one thing, one example that I'd like to share. Another example that I'd like to talk about is that we have been working very, very hard to support our communities through the pandemic. Our community outreach program called Prabhat, which actually came up a decade ago with the intent of building sustainable communities around our manufacturing sites. We really ramped this up during COVID and touched over 2 million people through COVID relief work, which included distributing our products, educating them about the importance of safety, sanitation, and hygiene, even more through COVID, distributing hygiene kits and masks, and even setting up telemedicine centers. We also launched what we called a Mission Hope, where to combat the pressure on infrastructure, which we saw during the second wave. And we used the larger Unilever network to procure over 5,000 concentrators and made them available through a unique distribution model across cities where people could borrow, use, and return. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, picking up on the theme of inclusion that we've been speaking about, is that the one thing that really we saw going up during COVID was the cases of domestic violence. And all of us read about this. And everybody knows about our commitment to being gender balanced. But, we said if we want to be truly inclusive, we've got to become a voice of advocacy and advocacy for the country. And one of the biggest issues around having women working in our ecosystem is making sure that they are safe at home, safe at work, safe in public places. And we launched a gender neutral policy for survivors of domestic abuse. And then we said that's not enough. We took a commitment that in the last year, we would touch 100,000 women in our ecosystem and educate them around aspects of safety at work, safety in public places, and safety, at home. And very proud to share that this is a milestone that we have been able to achieve. And this year we want to touch 500,000. So I'll take a pause here.
Wow. So altogether, being the chartered accountant in me comes out. That's almost 2.5 million people that you've impacted, and that's huge. So a lot of companies are going to be out there and going, oh yeah, well, that's Unilever, they've got billions. But the point is, they actually put their money where their mouth was and did what was needed in the most difficult time. So thank you for those fantastic examples. Can I move to Reshma? Reshma, same question to you.
Yeah, so we don't have the Unilever's billions, so I won't get into those dramatic numbers. But two things I want to highlight, and Anuradha touched upon the inequities in the societies, which came out very starkly during COVID times. There was one other thing that came out very starkly during the COVID times, and subsequently we are all living that, is the mental health and well-being. So every organization, every part of the society, and I should say that every part of the society is going through that, and organizations are feeling the brunt of it, because when COVID hit, and I was a victim to that, and I never thought my home was small until COVID hit. I didn't have tables at home. My son went into homeschooling. My husband went into home office. I went into home office, and we just had one study table for my son. We didn't have tables at home. We didn't have chairs at home. I was using the dining chair. My husband was using the bar stool at the kitchen island. And, it put a lot of pressure, which we didn't realize. We simply did not realize. And imagine, like, I don't mean to sound arrogant here. We are actually not in the lower levels of the society. We could afford chairs and tables. We just had to go out and get them when the stores open. The whole COVID pandemic put a lot of completely unforeseen pressures on individuals, because you had to take care of the kids. You had to take care of everything else that was taken for granted. You had to shift your workplace to home. And this was unforeseen, and you just don't bring it to your conscious mind. So mental well-being is a definitely something that came out starkly. And one of the things that Adecco has done, and I'm again no big numbers in that sense, but one of the things that we have made available to all of our 35,000 employees is something we call the program is called We Care, and we have it's country based. So I'm based in the headquarters, and headquarters we have an app which we can actually log in. It's just conversations, and sometimes what I have felt personally, is I just needed to share it with someone other than my husband that, I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm just overwhelmed. I can't do it all. I can't take it all. And the power of conversation. So what we have started as part of the mental well-being is this We Care, and we have teams that run it. One of them is also part of my team. We run it across the world to say that, just conversations, what are the coping mechanisms, what are coping strategies, some strategies that work. The second part, and I think we again probably underestimate this, and COVID brought out again that very starkly, is flexible working. So, if you have to get to the office at 8 in the morning, I can tell you, I can't do that. I could not have done it during the COVID times. Yes, we went back to home office, but I could not have logged in at 8. No, there was no way. So flexible working. So this is other things. So this is open to everyone. And even after the offices are open, we are not insisting. And I'm very proud to say we are not insisting people show up at the office. Yes, the office needs to be a place where you come, collaborate. We all want the human interaction. So office is a place to collaborate, meet people, but it's not looked at as a working space. So mental well-being, again, what Adecco does, but I would say this is across the organization. COVID has brought this very, very starkly out. And the second part I would say is innovation. I was reading probably a viral post in one of the social media. The biggest accelerator, and Debbie, for you, Accenture, who is actually at the forefront of digital transformation, the biggest accelerator of digital transformation was COVID. So with the digital transformation, I would say something that also comes out is innovation. So small innovations, and again, what EDECO, thanks to technology for sure, but small things can change, and thanks to technology and the power of, again, diversity and inclusion, you know, one person cannot think it all. So some people who are thinking out of the box. What we did, I mentioned it in my when I spoke last, was the platform that we have brought together for the refugees to find job. It's a simple thing, but we could do it overnight. So when Russia declared war, next day we could have the platform. So innovation and mental well-being, I would say, accelerated by COVID, amplified by COVID, but is something that is going to come at the forefront. And it's not just HR as a function in that sense, but organizations have started to take notice of it, and organizations will continue to start take notice of it.
Brilliant. Reshma, the word that comes to mind when you talk, it's another A word, it's agility. It sounds like that wherever a problem came up, you came up with an agile solution that really helped people. The idea of a We Care app, where, you know, in our terminologies, it's giving people the opportunity to speak the unspoken dialogues, the ones that are going around in their head, which are chewing their brains up. Just being given an opportunity to talk takes so much pressure off. So I think that's a fascinating innovation. And also, I think giving people ideas of coping strategies. A lot of the time when you're going through that grief or difficulty, you know, people aren't aware that your amygdala takes over and your growth and learning center in your brain shuts down. So to have someone say, hey, you can just do this, you're just suddenly like, oh my God, that's true. I can just do that. So I think those are really laudable, really practical. And of course, what you did with the refugees, outstanding, fantastic. So thanks for that, Reshma. Debbie, over to you.
Well, thank you. And compressed transformation did move technology forward very quickly. And because I don't want to highlight the exact same ideas that we've heard thus far, I thought I would shift it just a little bit. So one of the things that we did to help not only our organization, but many organizations during the pandemic and the full time that we were working from home, if you will, from COVID, is we did some research around what does it take to be a responsible leader in this new world. And we realized that responsible leadership, it's part of the behaviors, it's part of the mindsets, as we've heard here today, whether it's the well-being, the mental state that we have, and really how we take on tangible practices and processes to help shape what we consider to be the sustainable organization. And what we found is that there were 5 elements of responsible leadership that all leaders could really have within their toolkit. Part of it is stakeholder inclusion. We've got emotion and intuition, really being able to relate to your employees and your consumers. That mission and purpose that we spoke about earlier and what that means for your organization, technology and innovation, and making sure that we're also focused on how we're going to be able to change for the better, and then intellect and insight. We know that many of these responsible leadership elements are really hard, right? It's not easy. So we also then identified 3 steps so that individuals would be able to do this. And we didn't just do this on our own. We worked with 4,000 organizations to develop what we now call the sustainability DNA, so that we're able to find if there was an association between this strong leadership and this responsible leadership to the working of the company. And we found out that the leaders who really had these top quartile strengths that we just talked about were able to outperform those organizations that did not embody those by almost 21% in terms of both profitability and positive, both environmental and societal impact. And what this means for our organization is, as we try to embed each of these elements into what we do, it's diagnosing where we have those strengths and where we have the gaps and need to become stronger. It's defining those key interventions and where we need to boost the stakeholder alignment. So what are our employees needing? What are our consumers needing? Where are our suppliers? And what do they need as part of this? And then, of course, really developing the roadmap. to how we move forward with that equitable change and have the clear KPIs and the metrics to align and balance to that purpose and impact. And so doing this is a little bit different, but then we were able to loop it back to very much what's been described for the successes at Unilever and some of the other organizations that are here. So I thought I would kind of put a different focus on that.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That's really helpful. So you actually did research during a period where a lot of people were just trying to deal with it. And, you know, that whole, you did the thinking for the community, really. And you talked about the 3Ds, the diagnostics, defining the gaps and defining the needs, and also developing the map. And then you did the 4th D, which is driving it all forward. So that's really laudable, because I think a lot of the time we stop at the point of, okay, so we found out what's wrong, and then we kind of let it go into a report and forget about it. But actually driving the agenda forward post that and making things happen is brilliant. So thank you. Thank you for that. Asim Ji, what would you add to this?
Yeah, so I will like to share a bit of our background. So we are part of the United Nations Global Compact, and the India network is among the very few who have been, in the last few years done excellent work. And the reason for that is that we are the only agency in India which is, mandated to drive all the 17 SDGs and, work particularly with private sector businesses to make sure that they follow the sustainability models. They work on 10 principles, so which means governance, ethics, anti-corruption, and human rights. And these are, very critical issues. And it is not something that has started only yesterday. We have been dealing with these kinds of problems, but somewhere, the accelerator element had to come in. And that is how the entire strategy of the UNGC has changed. And now we are one UN Global Compact, and very scalable, very down to earth, on the ground efforts are on everywhere. And for example, Accenture is our member globally also, and in India also, and they do so much work with us, for us. For example, this is not the only thing that they are part of with us. They are also part of the water and wash work stream. They are also part of the gender and skilling work stream. And likewise, Unilever, they are our members. And, a lot of things that we do are, with the guidance of Unilever at times. And sometimes we play the role of, sending some message across, and it has always been, Unilever's strength to respond, in spite of, they do so much on their own. But still, when we had our first water roundtable of, top leaders, so Willem Wynn was there very much to discuss. Likewise, we did a water tech roundtable where, we wanted to bring to the fore the fact that how can technology help in not only water, but also in wash. And when we say wash, we are talking of hygiene, we are talking of health, we are talking of sanitation. And in that process, we are also touching on educating people, making them aware, making them sustainability literates, because there is a huge difference, as I understand, between somebody knowing something and somebody being literate about it. And we have therefore decided that now we work on certain targets with private sector particularly, and we are already have a energy and climate change work stream. Then we also have the sustainable agriculture and agribusiness work stream, which we have just launched. And the kind of responses that we are getting is tremendous, because sustainability has always been an opportunity and it's a business case. So now as people begin to understand this, and I am particularly part of the Bureau of Indian Standards subcommittee on CSR and SDGs. So we are the government of India itself is in the process of coming out with ratings. And when that happens, right now some 1,500 companies have been asked to do this. So all this GRI and ESG reporting and the frameworks are going to become so foolproof that companies will cease to exist, and we will only be looking at companies which are sustainable, and where people would want to work, people would want to supply to them, people would want to buy their products, and people will support those organizations. And that will be a point where we will not be at crossroads, rather we will be intersections of further development. And another thing that I wanted to share is that I think Anuradha talked about advocacy. So that is one very strong weapon. I will use the word strong weapon in our hands, because gone are the days when you would say CSR and your job is done. So I am saying this is something which has come from these organizations' DNA and influence the world in making difference. So the idea is not that, okay, if the law says I have to give 2%, that is not the idea. The idea is that because you are a responsible part of the society, part of the planet, part of humanity, therefore you have to do something. You have to, if you take X amount of water, you have to replenish that water and create capacity for more. And when some of you have used the word either underprivileged or lower levels, I in fact call that particular segment as the base of the pyramid. So if we don't build the base, I mean, base is not solid, then how are we going to have sustainable buildings made on that? So therefore, it is very important that we mainstream the efforts that we do under sustainability, and that is what organizations like Unilever and many others are doing. And we also from our side are always trying to amplify those efforts. So and frugal innovations and circular efforts, I mean, all road leads to the same sustainable world. But goal number 17 is the most important, which is partnership for goals, because as you rightly said, we need not only two ideas, but many ideas to come to the best possible solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Aseem. And we're just about to run out of time, so I'm going to say a big thank you to you. I think, what I've really got out of the whole discussion, and Aseem, I think your last section really summed it up. I think UNGC really provides the role of being an enabler, an aggregator, and an integrator of these brilliant ideas. And I think the more kinds of competitions that run, the more you do these kinds of events, we are going to be able to magnetize and accelerate other people so that we can have the planet that we deserve to live in, rather than the planet that we necessarily have now. And on that note, I will say a huge thank you to the panel. You've been fantastic. And I'd like to hand over to Shreya to do the closing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Purya, for moderating such a thought-provoking and extremely insightful discussion on this agenda, which we all agree by now is very important to build a culture of adopting sustainable practices in an organization. And it all starts from the very core, human resources. So thank you so much to all our speakers, Ms. Reshma Ramachandran, Ms. Anuradha Razdan, Ms. Deborah McCormack, and Mr. Asim Kumar for sharing your very valuable insights with the audiences today, which no doubt comes from years and years of your experience and learnings. We agree that the HR agenda cannot be different from the sustainability goals, and we need to start innovating, using technology, and quantifying our goals if we need to achieve them. We're indeed very fortunate that all of you shared your experiences with us today, and thank you once again. I would also like...
I thank everyone here, including Shreya and Shruti and the entire GCNI and Accenture teams and all the supporters and partners of this wonderful engagement. But at the same time, I want to say to these top women leaders and colleagues that let us dirty our hands together. Then only will we find daag achhe hain. Then only we will find something, to show to the world that yes, this is the way. Unless you get into the pool, you can't learn swimming. So simulations will not work. What will work is the on-ground action. And very, very proud of all of you. And it is kind of getting emotional also at times. That's why, I interrupted Shreya and jumped in between. So sorry, Shreya, but thank you, everyone.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely being together.
Pleasure. It is always a pleasure for interruptions like this, because as you rightly said, that it is goal number 17, partnership for all, through which we can achieve our goals. And on that note, I would also like to thank all our partners who've supported the championship and this particular session as well. Our presenting partners, HDFC Life, knowledge partner Accenture, we can't thank you enough. Co-partner New India Assurance, digital marketing partner Learn with Leaders, media partner Achhi Khabar, sustainability action partner Sustain Labs Paris, technology partner Social Ladder, and host portal Sustainiverse. More partners, the better. The list goes on. And last but never the least, as you mentioned, thank you, and a big round of appreciation for our team members, colleagues at UNGCNI, Accenture, who worked tirelessly to curate this program.
And the audience today. And the
audience members who joined us today.
Right.
We hope to continue working in this decade of action. Thank you so much, and good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Have a great weekend. God bless. Bye.
Thank you.